I splurged. I bought a brand new camera. You guys let me know if the image and the sound is better. We'll see. I'm ready to tackle the next phase of this project though. Let me show you what we're going to do. So this is where we left off the last time. I had finished the middle cabinet. Everything was assembled, 4 coats of varnish or finish on all the inside parts, which are going to be the ones that are going to be visible in the end. What I'm going to focus now is this cabinet. There's a couple of differences when compared to this one. First of all, it's a little bit narrower. There's not these two corners that you see here on both the base and the top frame. Those are gone. So this is a very rectangular build. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is that while the inside wall is made of plywood, just like this cabinet, the outside wall is made in quarter sawn white oak. So I'm going to focus this video on how I build the outside wall, the quarter sawn oak one, and on how I assemble these two cabinets together side by side.
As previously mentioned, I've been using 3/4 inch birch plywood for most of the build so far. What I've built is not going to be exposed, so I'm looking for stability and strength, and plywood is an obvious choice. With the side cabinets, the outside wall is going to be exposed, and therefore I'm going to start using quarter sawn white oak. So I bought 4/4 boards, 8 feet long, and began by cutting the pieces to rough length at my miter saw. Then it was off to the jointer to establish one flat face and one square edge. Then off to the planer to plane the boards down to 3/4 inch, and finally the table saw to cut them to final width.
So for the last couple of minutes I've been setting up to do something that I've never done before. And that is, once I've got my boards completely milled and they're parallel, is to clean up the edge joint with my big honkin' plane. It's a bevel up plane. I just put fresh edge on it, put some wax on the sole, and what this allows me to do is to have a nice clean edge. So let me show you what that looks like. So a couple of passes will clean up any saw marks from the table saw, any imperfections in terms of the alignment, and the way I test this is once I've got a couple of passes done, just check with a straight edge and see that there's no light nowhere along the board, and that tells me that I've got a nice straight edge ready for edge jointing.
So those of you that follow my channel will know that I like to use biscuits when I edge joint multiple boards. Before leaving for the evening, I cut biscuits on all 6 boards of the side wall, which allowed me to do my glue up the very next morning. Later that afternoon, I took the glue up out of the mini clamps, secured it to my bench, and used a card scraper to remove the dried excess glue. It's the first time I use a card scraper for this purpose, and I have to admit it won't be the last. It worked beautifully. I sanded both faces of the glue up, and I did that off camera. The next day, I started by cutting the board to final length. I used my Bora guide to do that with my circular saw. And after that, I use my Bora router plate to cut all the dados and rabbets. I'm eventually going to do another video on the Bora system. I learned a lot of really good lessons, and it would be a shame not to share them. So look for that, hopefully in the near future.
Good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm back in the shop today. Yesterday I did not spend any time in here as I went and bought some lumber. So if you see in the corner over there next to my rack, there's a bunch of 1/4 inch plywood that I cut to size, and that's going to be the backing for the 3 cabinets. I had to buy 2 sheets of plywood, 1/4 inch, nice birch plywood. It came to a total of $182 for 2 sheets of plywood. I am floored by the cost and the prices of lumber right now. It's absolutely insane. All right, so this morning I started by sanding down both sides of my outside wall to 220 grit. It's smooth, it's really nice. I need to clean it up, but it's ready for a finish. Now, what I'm going to do next is concentrate on the other wall. And to do that, I need to show you something because it's a pretty important detail. So this is the wall from the middle cabinet. And if you recall, there is a cut at 45 degrees right on the front here. And the corresponding wall for the side cabinet needs to be the exact same length on the long side, and it also needs to be cut at 45 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my piece 35 1/4 inches long, take some measurements and cut this to size flush. I'll make all my dados, and then I'll come back to the table saw at the very end and cut the 45-degree angle right on the front.
So this footage was taken after all the dados and rabbets were cut on this piece of plywood. Like I said earlier, I found it better to cut the 45-degree bevel after the dados and rabbets were cut, and there's a good reason for that. Because the Bora router guide holds better on a square face than a beveled one. Now, off camera, I put 4 coats of floor varnish on all the visible inside faces of this cabinet, and then proceeded to assemble the unit. A couple of important points here. First, so far, I've been using screws to secure the walls to the bottom shelf and the top brace. I can't do that with the outside wall because it's made of oak, and it would look really awful if you saw screw heads in the oak. So what I ended up doing is just using a glue joint on the dados and letting it dry for a few minutes, then moving it into position. Eventually, I reinforced those joints with dowels. Sorry, but I have no footage of me adding those dowels in the joints. Anyways, assembly was tricky. You're going to see me go through a couple of gymnastics here to get everything together. It's cumbersome and it's tough to manipulate, but yeah, especially for one person, but eventually I got it all done. Since the inside facing wall is plywood, I could use screws in this particular case.
So I'm not too sure what happened here, but this piece right here, this brace, is extending a little bit too far. Luckily, it's pretty easy. I've got my angle here. I just extend the line. I use my jigsaw, correct the problem right away. And that's what the two cabinets look like when they're placed together. I think I'm going to run out of room when it's time to build the third one, but that's the next part. All right, folks, that's it for this video. I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to put in the middle shelf and the middle brace, and this cabinet will be done, and then we'll be able to work on the final one, which is going to go over there. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.